Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Zach with GDC LLC, and I am continuing the series about starting your own construction business. It can apply to a small business or a large business, and it could be for anywhere from a general contractor down to just a specific tradesman. And so just to review the last few episodes, I started off with a general breakdown of all the things that you may need to do to start your construction business. Then we dived into the schedule and the budget. And today is going to be about your scope of work. I would have to say the three main things to build a project are going to be your schedule, your budget, and your scope of work. If you can nail in these three things, then you're going to have a good foundation for starting a project. You're going to go into it feeling good. You're going to hit your gross profit goals, and you're going to have a successful project. So today, scope of work. So this is very important, and it's also very difficult. So scope of work is going to be you trying to encapsulate everything that you're going to do on a project. And that could be very difficult for people who don't have a lot of experience in this industry. If you're just starting out and you're trying to do projects, like even just a small project, like you want to do somebody's back steps, you still are going to want to apply these same methods to a small project like that. So you're going to have to define every step you're going to take throughout that project and try to break that down and allocate money to certain aspects of it, allocate time to other aspects of it, and hone in on what it's going to cost. Because ultimately, when we're bringing a project to somebody, it's not that we want to just make a buttload of money. We want to give people value. And to give people value is to actually price your work for what it's going to cost. And you could just ballpark a number out there, and let's say it's going to take you 3 days to do it, and you say, I want to make $1,000 a day, and you say, here's $3,000, it's going to cost you $3,000 plus whatever the materials are. You could do that if you know it's going to take you 3 days, but I'd like to dive a little bit deeper for all of you so that you can really hone in on what it's going to cost you, what it's going to cost your client, and how can you project these small projects, big projects, whatever type of projects out for your year or your next year or the next 5 years of your business to where you can start accurately building your business. We don't want to get stuck in just the focusing of this job, oh, then I have my next job, and just get caught in that cycle of just a small mind frame focus. It's really easy to get caught in that. I got caught in it for a very long time. You're just waiting for the next job to come in, and you bid it, you perform the job, and then your mind gets put onto the next one. No, we want to build scopes. We want to build a project. We want to build the schedule, and we want to build the budget, and we want to project that out for years to come so that we can properly plan what we want to do for the business. Do we want to buy vehicles? Do we want to start doing some marketing? Do we want to get more team members? Whatever it may be. And being able to define these three important things, the schedule, the budget, and the scope of work, are just going to make that easier. So scope of work, like I said, the first thing is you got to know what you're talking about. And so talking to all the specific tradesmen here, I'm sure you have a pretty good understanding of your specific trade, and that's great. And you can be very profitable in this industry if you know what it takes to perform a task. Let's say you're an electrician and you're doing new outlets, or you're doing a kitchen. You know you got to run your wires, you got to maybe update the panel box, you got to account for all the trims that you're going to finish the place for, you got to run your lights, whatever it may be. You can break that down into a list of things and times and monies and all the costs, and formulate that plan and perform it and have it be a success. Now, what does it bring to your business to break it down further? So like I said in the first example, you can just go by days and say, oh, it's going to take me 3 days to do this. This is the cost. Well, there's kind of a flaw in that system. And the flaw is you're not accounting for the hidden variables in the project. So let's give you this example. We're going to go back to the deck. It's going to take you 3 days to do or back steps. It's going to take you 3 days to do the back steps. And you bring that to the customer and tell them that. You say, this is what it's going to cost to do it. I should be about 3 days to do this. And you don't break anything else down for them. Well, if you run into a scenario, like let's say behind the ledger of the old steps, there is rot, or there's digging in the dirt is taking a lot longer than what you needed it to if you have to pour a new footing or something. Well, if you kind of pigeonholed yourself into just asking for a certain amount of money to perform the project they asked you for, you don't have a lot of room to ask for more money. Whereas if you break everything down, the demolition of the old steps, the framing of the new steps, the trimming of those new steps. Well, if you start breaking that down more and more, if you run into a problem in any one of those steps, you can go to the client and say, this was the defined scope of work, and now we're deviating from that defined scope of work. And because of these variables, I'm going to have to give you a change order for this cost. Where it's very difficult to do that if you just are giving a one lump sum, say, we're going to do this project for you, it's going to cost you this much. Because the customer is going to say, well, you said you were going to do the project for me for this cost. Like, what do you expect? Like, I expect to just pay this amount of money. You didn't put any variables, you didn't get any information, you were just selling me a product, and I purchased that product. And it's just, you can still potentially get money from them. I'm not saying that you can't, but it just makes it a lot more difficult and uncomfortable. And you don't want that for your clients. You want to walk them through this process as smoothly as possible, and you don't want to become the bad guy. And you can become the bad guy if you're not defining everything. I'm going to extrapolate this onto a much bigger project and issues that I've had in the past personally that have come back to bite me. And it's all boils down to my scope of work was not defined enough. So I've broken things down like into interior trim, interior doors, and cabinetry and stuff like that. Well, when I just put interior trim, interior doors, or cabinetry, it doesn't account for, or what with the person that's purchasing that product, what they think is, I'm giving them all their interior trim, I'm giving them all their doors, and I'm giving them all their cabinets finished out the door, done. Well, what happens when there's hardware that goes on interior doors? Well, did you account for that hardware? Maybe you ran into a problem with the interior doors. They're just taking longer, the walls are all funky, and you're losing time, you're losing money, and then on top of all that, now you got to install all the handle sets and the cabinets. You didn't account for all the accessories like the knobs, the pulls, whatever. And now the cabinet install took too long, the floor was out of level, whatever the variable may be, but you didn't define that. And so what happened to me is exactly that. I didn't create an item for like accessories or hardware, like a hardware line item. It was just given to the customer through different line items. So interior doors, it was just lumped in there. Well, that's not very good, because now the customer thinks, this is what I'm getting. I'm getting a finished interior door. I can't use an interior door without a handle. But if you don't account for that, and then you run into issues, then it's really difficult to go back to that customer and be like, hey, I sold you this $500,000 job, but I forgot to put handles in there, and I'm going to have to add all this hardware and handles to the scope of work. No, that's not going to fly, and you're just going to have to eat that cost. You're going to have to just perform the work and bite your tongue. Same thing with it happened to me with handrails. Didn't put handrails in the scope of work, but you can't get your final building inspection if you don't have handrails. So it's like, well, we just got to do this, and we didn't define it in the scope of work. I'm not saying that this is a process that you're going to start and it's just going to change your life overnight. It's something you have to build. You've got to build it from job to job to job, and maybe a year down the road, 2 years down the road, you're going to have it perfectly honed in to where you're going to pull up your list for your typical job, and you're going to see all those line items, and it's going to inspire questions to your customer. Like, it's going to be, oh, we're doing interior doors on this job. Hey, if you look down here on this line item, we have hardware. Are we installing the hardware for you? Okay, we're installing the hardware for you. Well, have you thought about what kind of hardware you want? And then you can go down that rabbit hole, and then you can get an accurate price for doing the work. And if there's any deviation from that, like let's say they just picked standard knobs for the doors, and then for some reason they wanted to do like a mortised in pole, well, then you have some legs to stand on. You can say, hey, you can see in the contract here and in our scope of work, we're doing knobs on the doors. It's fine if you want to do poles, but it's just going to be an extra charge for us to do that because there's more work, and you can justify that too by talking through them with your knowledge. It takes more work to do that than just installing a knob set on a pre-bored door. And so, like I said, if you can really hone in on all these things and build that budget, have every line item covered, give it to the customer, not only are they going to be impressed, but they're going to think this is accurately what it's going to cost for me to do a project, because a lot of customers already go into doing work knowing that they've been burned before, because they have been burned before, where they get given a contract for a set amount of money, and then by the end of the project, it's almost doubled in price. And that's because the people did not define the scope of work properly, and they came back and they asked for more money to do the work, which I'm not saying they shouldn't get paid for the work they're doing, but how many times have you run into a customer like this and you think to yourself, well, there's a reason they're not calling that person that performed this work before. 9 times out of 10, that reason is because when they sold the job to the customer, they weren't, I wouldn't even say it wasn't fully honest. A lot of times it might be that they were dishonest, but they weren't knowledgeable enough in the project that they were performing, and they had to make up for it in the long run, and it has put a sour taste in the customer's mouth. And so then they reach out to you, hopefully who is a professional and has figured out how to tackle their schedule, their budget, and now their scope of work, and they're going to go into this project knowing that they chose the right person. And that's what we want. We want you to show up and give them that contract and them to sign it very happily, because they know that you're performing the work right. If there is any deviation from this, it's not going to be a huge deviation, and it'll be they'll be able to swallow it better, and it's just going to propel your business into the future. They're going to tell their friends about it. Every person that you interact with is going to have a good story from you, and they're going to have a pleasant experience from you. And so that's what we're all hoping for, is to ultimately, at the end of the day, we do want to make money. That's why we're in this business, and that's why we want to do it for ourselves, is because we want to make money. But we also, like I said in the beginning of this video, is we want to create value for these people. And that's going to propel your business the fastest if you are creating value. So sometimes there's going to be scenarios where you have to just eat some costs, or you have to take more time to do something than you allotted. That happens to all of us. But I urge you to take that time, eat a couple I'm not saying eat thousands and thousands of dollars here, just a little bit to give the value. You got to have quality workmanship. You got to be present. You got to respond, and you're going to propel your business. Trust me. It's just the way this business works is that at the end of the day, it's just customer service. You got to be good at customer service, or else you're not going to be getting those callbacks or those referrals, and you might get bad reviews, and it will hurt your business immensely. And so when we are defining our own scope of work, it can be very simple because we know what it takes to do a project. But what happens when you're a general contractor and you're creating a scope of work, not only for the trades that you're familiar with, but other trades as well? So let's say that you're a carpenter who's a general contractor now, and you know, let's say carpentry, electrical, plumbing, roofing, and then like siding and exterior work. But this project calls for HVAC, or it calls for some masonry work, and you just don't know much about it. Well, that's when you got to bring in people that you trust, or you got to meet people that you think you can trust to come look at the project for you. They'll tell you the process that it takes to get the work done. So if you need a bricklayer, they're going to tell you. And you got to ask them. You can't just ask for a price. You got to say, what is the scope of work for this? And they're going to tell you. They're going to say, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do that. Then I can do this. I need you to do that. Then I can do this. And writing all that down, you're at that moment creating that scope of work. And you take that scope of work, you ask them for an estimate, they send it to you, and you cross-reference it. So everything that they told you that was needed to get done, you need to go back and double check that everything that they're giving you a quote for is on that scope of work. I can't tell you how many times I've had electricians, plumbers, whatever, you name it, walk through a project. We define everything that's going to get done on a project, and then when they send me their estimate or quote or whatever, it's missing some stuff that we talked about, which is fine. People miss things. People make mistakes. But if you're the one who's leading this project, it's your responsibility to create that scope of work, because then you can go back to your subcontractors and say, hey, you forgot that we're doing this room too. Can you update your quote and make sure that's in there, and then we'll move forward. And that's the same thing that we were talking about earlier in this video, is creating that scope of work for your subcontractors as well. Holds them accountable, holds them responsible, and it makes sure that they actually perform the work that needs to get done. Because the last thing you want to happen is you forgot to cross-reference that. They come in, they do everything they quoted, and then they leave, and you ask, hey, you forgot to do this part of the project, and they say, that's not part of my scope of work. And now you're backtracking, and now you're like, oh my God, we talked about this. They're like, oh, well, I sent you a quote for everything I'm doing, and it's just this back and forth where you're like, oh my God, and you're in a bad place where now it's messing with your schedule. You maybe were bringing in another trade, and now you have to push them back because that work's not done. Oh, they went and started another job, so they can't come back for another week. And it snowballs from there. And imagine if you're doing a project with 10, 15 different subcontractors on it, and you're missing these things on each one of them, it's just gonna, at the end of the project, you're gonna be way out from what you projected it to be finished, and you're gonna be a lot more miserable because you're going to look back in hindsight and say, this could have all been avoidable. And how many times have you all sat there at the end of a project and looked back on all the things that you struggled with and said, I could have avoided all these things if I just really put my head in there and thought of every detail. You're not going to think of every detail. That's just a reality of life. You're just not gonna. It's gonna happen on projects, and you're gonna have to learn from it and try to move forward. But you can minimize that dramatically if you're just getting your scope of work defined. And I urge all of you to start practicing this, start looking at your projects in a new lens. Say, I am not only here to give this person a dollar figure and hope that they choose me. I'm here to create their project. I'm here to define every part of it. I'm here to bring in professionals. I'm here to have them feel confident in everything I'm doing. And if you're able to do that, then it, like I keep saying, it's gonna propel your business. People resonate with that. They resonate with a person who's professional, who's driven, who does not miss things, who asks the proper questions, who comes with the right paperwork, the right questionnaires, the right information for people, because your clients are not going to know everything. And if you have a list of things and you're delivering these questions to them, that's going to instill so much confidence in them. And they're going to know that they picked the right person for the project. And like I said, this can be on a small scale. You can do this with just the back steps example. You can go in there and say, hey, I'm going to have to grade the lawn. I'm going to have to assess your house for any rot damage. I'm going to have to pour some footers, and we're going to have to get them inspected by the town. I'm going to have to build this. Well, how do you want to finish this? I can see the rest of your house has all wood finishes. I think it makes sense to do all wood finishes on this. Oh, your house has all PVC or vinyl. I think we should probably copy that and do this. The people are going to resonate with that. They're going to say, wow, this person knows every part of this project. They're asking me about every part. They're asking me what I want. They're telling me what needs to get done. And they're going to, at that point, the money almost doesn't even matter. Once you've created that confidence with people, the money goes out the window. They figure out how to pay for it because they want you to work. So they want you to work with you so badly. They'll call up their great aunt or something, say, hey, I need the money to do this. Tell me, or trust me, people do that. They'll figure out a way to pay for you because you're delivering such a good service to them. And back to the beginning, it all goes down to these three things: creating that schedule, creating that budget, and creating that scope of work. If you can deliver that to people and say, it's going to take me 2 months to perform this project, this is how much it's going to cost, and this is everything that I need to do to perform this project, they're going to sit there and be like, oh my God, this is the most professionalism I've seen in a very long time. Most people just show up in a broken up pickup truck and they don't answer my calls, and they just text me a dollar number, and they only show up once a week. I mean, that's so common. We want to elevate our businesses to the level where people strive to work with us. They want to work with us. They figure out how to work with us. And that all goes back to those three basic principles. If you can master these principles, I promise you, you will have a successful business. There's a lot more to dig into each and every one of these things, but on a surface level, defining the scope, building that budget. Go back to my previous videos, look at the budget, figure out how to create that budget, go back to the other video and figure out how to build that schedule, how to adjust that schedule, how to maintain a healthy schedule, and you're going to have a very successful business. I promise you that. So I'd like all of you to like this video, subscribe to the channel. More of this content is going to come out. I'm trying to update a space where we can talk in a more formal setting, be more laid back, maybe move into live streams. And it just really helps the channel. The channel is not growing if people aren't liking the videos or sharing them or subscribing. The algorithms on YouTube just do not push you out there unless you have people interacting with your videos. And so if you liked it, if you got some value from it, then please do these few things for me, and I will continue to provide as much value as I can. See you on the next one.